Hello, welcome back, everyone. I am Christopher, and with me, as always, is Jay. Today, we are talking about the worst NFL team out there, at least by win percentage all time. We also will be talking about how many players from the 2002 team alone will end up making this list. And most importantly, I will debut my new hair. All that and more here on the Lunch Room Syndicate's all-time Tampa Bay Buccaneers team.
If this is your first time joining us for an all-time team, welcome. And how we do it is we choose really based on whatever suits our mood. So Christopher usually looks at stats a little more heavily than I do. And I'm big on name recognition for players, but we are taking 22 players, 11 on the offensive side, 11 on the defensive side.
Absolutely are. Here on the offensive side alone, we'll be taking 1 QB, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and 4 from what we call the alt-O spot, alternate offense, which will encompass basically any other position offensively, like offensive line, maybe kick returners, or any others that didn't make some of the other positions as well. And defensively, we have 2 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, 4 defensive backs. And our alt-D will encompass others that didn't quite make those other positions and maybe a few punters from time to time.
Probably not.
All right. We have a tier system, as we have been doing over the past several videos on the NHL and NFL side. We will have 3 different tiers. Our top tier will be our no-brainers in terms of all-time status. Our middle tiers are people who are definitely in the conversation. They're greats in their own right. And our bottom tier guys that deserve mentioning, but probably really aren't going to make it most likely. Now, I don't know what coloration we're doing yet. That's a tough one with this team.
Well, I mean, we can go through and we can give a little love to their present and their past. I say top tier red, middle tier yellow, and bottom tier that brownish, silverish, whatever-ish it is.
All right. So yeah, that's a very weird brown. The creamsicle is the middle tier. I like it. But before we get started any further in terms of picking our players, it's the moment that Jay has been waiting for all day. Thought I was doing it last week, as a fact. So he's been waiting for over a week. The debut of my new hair, which honestly is not actually going to be my permanent hair. I'm going to switch it up with a couple months. This is just the beginnings of what my hair is going to be, but this is my new hair. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go.
Step number 1 with a real Slim Shady. Please stand up.
2, 1.
Oh, that is a midlife crisis meltdown right before our very eyes.
Hell yeah, it is, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Looking a little bit darker because of my lighting. That's typical with this type of hair. It's going to turn into blue down the line.
Man, you got to start up your own restaurant. You got a Guy Fieri look going on.
Yeah, they said the same thing at the salon.
Fuck, dude.
Oh yeah, gotta get a game show. Yep, this is the hair. I'm gonna start training it to go backwards for the slick back look. The midlife crisis has officially commenced. I can't wait to do this video in like March or in like April, May, and completely forget I had this because I'm in blue hair territory. Like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot about that. Okay, now that we've gotten this out of the way,
our face of the franchise.
Our face of the franchise. We have a few options here.
Do we?
I think we have 2, quite frankly.
Well, 2's not a few, and I think 2's pushing it.
Oh, I will have it. Well, actually, I tend to agree with you, but I think we have different players.
Yeah, but I think the reason you're not going with the correct one is just off of personal bias.
Maybe a bit, but I have my reasonings as well. Jay, how about you go ahead and start?
Well, the correct answer is one of the best defensive linemen to ever play, clearly the best for Tampa Bay, the one who just led the way for the outstanding Tampa Bay defense of the early 2000s, Warren Sapp.
Warren Sapp. That would be one of the two choices that I would go with, but I will contend that the face of the franchise is one of the best linebackers to ever play the game, the heart and soul of the 2002 defense, the man who stayed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and never went to free agency, played his whole career there, unlike Warren Sapp, Derrick Brooks, linebacker. You did mention personal biases. I'm going to get that out of the way now. When he was playing, I wasn't the biggest fan of Warren Sapp. I didn't particularly like how he played the game. I wasn't a huge fan of him going forward. I always thought that Derrick Brooks and John Lynch meant more to the Tampa Bay Buccaneer team. I think Warren Sapp might have had a bigger presence, which may matter more in the face of the franchise talk, but Derrick Brooks was the leader at heart and soul of this defense for longer than Warren Sapp was. They came in the league at the same time. What a 1995 draft for them, by the way. They got Derrick Brooks and Warren Sapp out of it. Derrick Brooks stayed his entire career. His entire career was a Buccaneer. 11-time Pro Bowler, 5-time first team All-Pro, was a game breaker, wrecker at linebacker, could cover with the best of them, could rush the passer when he needed to. He was the heart and soul of those early 2000s Tampa defenses.
But when we're doing face of the franchise, it has been well established with us. That does not necessarily mean the best player. When it comes to Tampa Bay, the first one that people would think of would be Warren Sapp, especially when you're thinking of their Super Bowl run and that dominant defense. Warren Sapp's the first name that comes to mind.
I think we shoot.
You're going to shoot for it?
I think we shoot.
Okay.
Because I'm not back. I'm definitely not backing off of Derrick Brooks. It's fucking Sapp.
All right. You want odds or evens?
Odds.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, shoot.
That's a 1, by the way. I have thumb up.
1, 2, 3, shoot. And we're
That's even.
1, 2, 3, shoot.
2 on me.
My way. 1, 2, 3, shoot. You got it.
Derrick. Boom shakalaka. Bam! That's not the right guy.
Well, if you're going to have the Geefy airy look, you're going to have to get his catchphrases down too.
Right.
Okay, so the face of the franchise is Derrick Brooks. But we'll get him put up once we get to linebackers, but we're starting off with the quarterback position. So our quarterbacks, this is not a good list of quarterbacks. We have some good names on here, but for Tampa Bay quarterbacks, it's not looking great. But we do have Tom Brady, Trent Dilhole, Josh Freeman, Brad Johnson, Vinnie Testaverde, Doug Williams, Jameis Winston, and Steve Young.
I was wondering if you were going to call him Dilhole. I come to like, what are you going to call him Dilhole?
That his name, I've been calling him Dilhole for so long that that's like his actual name. I don't even realize that it's an insult at this point.
I've insulted you so long. This is what I know you as. All right, let's start. I will start with
Thomas
Brady. We hate Tom Brady with an unbeknownst passion for a lot of different reasons.
I don't know if I hate him. I just think he's overrated.
Here's the one thing.
I have to shit on him more than he deserves to try to balance things out.
He's kind of like your Mario Lemieux of the NFL. I think that's a pretty good analogy.
I am less harsh on Mario Lemieux now.
Yeah, but when he played,
I didn't like Mario Lemieux when he played.
Yeah, so the thing about Tom Brady, he's a red tier for Tampa. He won the Super Bowl. I mean, that's what it is. When he was in New England, a lot of the things I used to say was, well, how would he do elsewhere? He wouldn't do anything. He wouldn't be that good. He went to literally the worst team in NFL history in terms of win percentage and won a Super Bowl. I gotta give him those props now. I have no. He did what I had said. He obviously didn't like, oh, that Chris Zunk guy, but he said what I wanted to say, and well, he did it, and he won.
There might have been a sentence in there.
There wasn't.
Doubt it though.
There wasn't, and that's the way I like it.
Trent Dilfer, 79 games there, 12,000 yards, almost 13,000 yards, 10 more interceptions and touchdowns, and those are the stats that we like right there. And if you can throw more picks than touchdowns, and that gets you all the way up to a red tier here.
Hell yeah, it does. Next up, Josh Freeman, another guy, 60 games played, 13,500 yards, had more touchdowns and interceptions. That's good. I thought he was better than he got credit for when he played. He wasn't very good. He was just a very high draft choice, so that's one of the reasons why many people were kind of down on him. He's on the brown tier for me.
Brad Johnson. Man, the names just they're not getting better. Brad Johnson, there's just nothing exciting here. He's bottom tier for me.
Next up, Jay.
Oh, that me?
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's you. You want me to take
it?
No,
I'm sorry. Yeah, you did.
I'll take Vinnie Testaverde.
My bad.
Because we can almost just sub in Dillhole. The only difference is, man, those interceptions are skyrocketing. You know my favorite thing with Vinnie Testaverde?
What's that?
I'm pretty sure he has the record for most completions without an interception, as well as the record for most interceptions. Like, how is this guy capable of the extremes that he put up in his career? So I'm going to give him some credit for that. I'm going yellow tier.
Next up, and it is my turn this time, and I screwed up last one. Doug Williams. Doug Williams led them to their first winning season. Had actually a pretty solid run with them. Was a 500 quarterback with Tampa Bay. That's pretty damn good. His stats aren't great, but considering it, the 47.4 is really harsh on the completion percentage. So like that's keeping me. I would like to put him at the yellow tier since he was pretty decent with them in terms of helping them finally establish some winning, but I don't know if I can put him above the bottom brown tier.
Jameis Winston. Well, we at least have a Pro Bowl here. So it's one of 3 Pro Bowls.
Yeah.
For the Buccaneers quarterbacks. 72 games played with just under 20,000 yards. I kind of liked him, didn't love him. He's a yellow tier for me.
In Tampa, he just could not stop turning the ball over. I understand it doesn't look like Vinnie Testaverde levels of turning the ball over, but he threw 30 picks in one season, which is astronomical. Became the first quarterback to ever throw 30 TDs and 30 picks in 1 year and 5,000 yards. He was the ultimate boomer bust QB.
And finally, we have the best quarterback here on the list, where are you putting Steve Young?
I mean, for Tampa, he's a bottom tier, unfortunately. The fact that they had Tampa Bay or the fact that Tampa Bay had Steve Young in their grasp and let him go is hilarious.
Okay, so that puts Tomas as our quarterback.
Yeah.
All right. Are any of these other people going over for more consideration in the alt-o? And who are we looking at for running backs?
At running back, we have Mike Allstott, Warwick Dunn, Doug, my favorite Martin, James Wilder, and Cadillac Williams.
First name on here is Mike Allstott. Mike Allstott, one of the best fullbacks in the NFL. Mike Allstott is a top tier red.
Next up, we have Warwick Dunn. We talked about him with Atlanta. Similar stats with a little bit better receiving back here in Tampa. Not as good as stats as I remembered him to be, but for me, we talked about his off the field work. He's a red tier for me.
And Doug Martin. Fewer games played, but not much behind on the rushing yardage. Same amount of touchdowns. I don't know why I'm struggling here putting them at, like, if I had to go between Warwick Dunn and Doug Martin, I'm like really close, but Doug Martin's still like a middle tier for me.
Next up, James Wilder, a name that I had heard of but didn't know much about until I started doing this video. Almost 10,000 total yards, 46 TDs. The more I read about him, the more I'm convinced that he's a red tier and was a bit overlooked this time.
Cadillac Williams. I remember the excitement and hype around him coming out of college. And even more than that, I remember the disappointment on the field surrounding Cadillac Williams and his inability to produce. He's a bottom tier.
Now we have a choice to make. We have 3 top tier guys. I feel like we probably agree on number 1.
I don't know if I can say that. I think I know my number 1.
Well, I was gonna go Mike Allstott. But which one do you have number 1? We don't have to put that up yet. That's what we're doing here. We're debating.
I don't have much of an argument other than, I mean, Allstott was more well-rounded. Like Wilder had the yards, but Allstott was a fucking fullback.
Yes.
See, and this is like I'm in another argument similar to what we were doing with the face of the franchise of bigger name for the team, better player.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Allstott, I think, is the bigger name. Wilder, I think, was the better player.
Mm-hmm. Well, in that scenario, with the face of the franchise, you have a point with, when you talk about face of the franchise, it's like one of the more well-known guys. When we're doing this type of thing, we're going for the better players when we're doing the positional battle. So if that's the case, I think I think James Wilder would be number 1.
That's my pick for number 1 then.
Okay. And he was more of a true halfback.
But that puts Mike Allstott at number 2.
Yes.
And Warwick Dunn is going to get copied on over to the alt-o. And wide receivers, who are we looking at?
We have Mark Carrier, Mike Evans, Joey Galloway, Chris Godwin, Kevin House, Vincent Jackson, and Keyshawn Johnson. Got some names on this side.
This is where I think my school of thought I'm picking has a bit of an advantage because none of them are great, especially in terms of stats. But
outside of one, I will argue one.
There are some players in here that have just really good name recognition that are known for being solid wide receivers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I'll let you go second because you have your one that you're going to want to talk about.
Yes.
But Mark Carrier, late 80s, early 90s, wide receiver. Good amount of receptions for his 88 games, average, about 3.5 catches per game, 5,000 yards, pretty decent there. I'm going to go mid-tier.
Mike Evans, I'm going to get it out of the way. He's a red tier. He's probably the best on this list for me. Mike Evans is putting up, he has been there for a long time through some really bad QB play, and he's had Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing the ball, Jameis Winston throwing the ball. Yes, he's had Tom Brady the last 2 years, but he is putting up a career. He's still playing, but when it's all said and done, as long as he can stay healthy, he's going to, probably play for another 5, 6, 7 years. He might be borderline Hall of Famer for this team.
And next up is Joey Galloway, a player that we are both very familiar with and we both really like. This is an older Joey Galloway that we're looking at here. And I think his impact on Tampa Bay just wasn't there. However, for name, I'm going mid-tier.
Another present day player, Chris Godwin, in his 5 seasons is produced quite a bit. In 72 games played, has some injury stuff, 342 catches, over 4,600 yards, 29 touchdowns. I'm not willing to go red yet with him. I want to. He's in a weird spot for me because he might be done with this team because of contract situations. So right now he's mid-tier for me. Are you in the red tier for him?
No, I was more in between bottom and mid. Kevin House is going to be overshadowed by being on some bad teams. So I have a hard time just going, yeah, he's a bottom tier, but realistically, he's a bottom tier for me.
Vincent Jackson, another name that we know pretty well, made a Pro Bowl in Tampa. Again, toward the tail end of his career as well. 63 games, has good numbers. Very similar to Godwin's as well. Just touchdowns lacking a bit. See, Jackson's in that mid-tier for me.
See, he's somebody that I kind of struggle with because I think he's going to be top tier on another team.
Mm-hmm.
Really exciting wide receiver, but again, just doesn't have a lot to show from his time in Tampa. And leads me right into Keyshawn, which is basically the same argument here for Keyshawn. For name recognition, I'm going to go mid-tier, but for its time in Tampa, he's almost a bottom tier.
But, we can be honest here as well with how we're tiering these off. Outside of Mike Evans, who would make a case on a lot of teams, some of these other guys would probably be bottom tier. This is kind of shows you how this tier system works for us. A lot of these guys in their stats wise would not really register even on a lot of teams.
Okay, so we have 2 selections and we're going between Mark Carrier, Joey Galloway, Chris Godwin, Vincent Jackson, and Keyshawn Johnson. I think I have my 2 names.
I was leaning towards, I had Mark Carrier on there, probably at number 2.
We're going to agree on him.
And I was between Galloway and Jackson. I think I lean Galloway because his TDs are a bit more compared to the receptions and yardage of Jackson. But I don't have a strong case either way here.
See, my 2 were Carrier and Vincent Jackson.
I mean, I'm comfortable putting Vincent Jackson at the 3 spot over Joey Galloway. I don't have a great argument, so I'm perfectly reasonable to default on that one.
Okay, so that takes us to what is turning out to be the most pointless position in our all-time teams. The tight end position, Cameron Brate, Jimmy Giles, Dave Moore. Who do you want to put up there? I don't care.
I think it's a bit of a runaway with Jimmy Giles. I think he's the only one that deserves a higher tier. I think he's a mid tier, and that's about as far as it goes.
Like, I don't even want to tier the other two. And I think mid tiers relative to the team that we're on here.
But finally, to finish off the offense, we do travel over to our alternate offense, our alt O. We have Paul Gruber, Davin Joseph, Tony Mayberry, Carl Williams, Warwick Dunn, Joey Galloway, and Chris Godwin. I will just make the case right now before we move on that this might be our weakest alt O we've had so far.
I want to put a little more emphasis on there and get rid of the might be. Paul Gruber, for me, is a bottom tier guy. I know he spent 11 years there. He's still a bottom tier for me.
Davin Joseph at his prime was legitimately good. So I would make a case that he could potentially be in the mid tier, but he's on that borderline range for me with him. He has 2 Pro Bowls. He only played 100 games. I think got injured, had some other problems, but
we're giving him a generous mid tier. I'm going to go ahead and throw out another generous mid tier with Tony Mayberry, with the 3 Pro Bowls in 9 years. Again, given him, even if I went bottom tier, it's bottom tier. He's worth mentioning. He is worth bringing up in the discussion when we're putting together our all-time team.
Yeah.
But just because of the lack of names on here, I'm going to go mid tier for Tony Mayberry.
I struggle with Carl Williams because he was an excellent punt returner, played some offense, never had great stats. 5 punt return TDs is pretty good. A solid average overall, but he never made a Pro Bowl as a returner. So for me, he's a bottom tier.
Yeah, I'm going to mark that even before you mention it.
That's figured. I want to make sure I'm right.
And we have work done, Joey Galloway and Chris Godwin on here.
Probably taking all 3 of them, right?
Matt, we are going this. I think that's safe going with the 3 of them. Normally we put in more talk about how many extra skill positions are we going to go with. We're going to go with all of them.
Yeah. I think with this situation, it warrants it. We talked about going back. So right now, I hate leaving off. I don't want to have an offense with no offensive lineman because it feels weird, but
there's nobody worth it for me.
Yeah. So the question is, we talked about potentially going back and cherry picking names here. Is a Tony Mayberry, which is the guy I'd probably put above of the 3 of the 4, above the 3 of the 2 yellows. He would be above Davin Joseph for me. Based on my research, he was underappreciated, blah, blah, blah. Is he better than, let's say, Jameis Winston?
Okay. I'm going to go a step further. I would take Keyshawn Johnson above him. I would take Doug Martin above him. I would take Winston or Vinnie Testaverde above him. I'm being honest with you.
I mean, fair. I would disagree with that to some extent. I think it's fair to point out his 3-time Pro Bowl nominations. He wasn't terrible. I think there's an argument to be had with Doug Martin and Jameis. So I would be between Doug and Jameis myself.
If we're going down to those 2, then I'm at Jameis Winston.
He can finally eat that W. Jameis Winston makes the alto.
Okay, I'm hedging.
Okay.
You should know why I'm hedging.
You just really like Sonic.
I do like Sonic. This is the weakest quarterback group that we've done.
Yeah.
Easily the weakest. And we're going to take 2 quarterbacks.
That's a good point too. but this is also the easily the weakest team we've had.
Damn it.
I mean, I'm okay with taking Doug Martin myself. If you don't want to take two quarterbacks, yeah. I mean, I'm obviously way more in favor of taking someone like Doug over Jameis, but
You like Doug Williams over Jameis Winston?
Doug Martin, the running back.
Doug Martin, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I would take Martin over Winston. They both were weird.
We'll take Doug Martin because, again, I don't want to take two quarterbacks from the weakest quarterback group.
No, we'll say this. Doug Martin on the offensive side of the ball, and this is apparently true, and not even Mike Evans can say this, which I think is surprising and a travesty to some extent. He's the only one to be named first team All-Pro in Tampa Bay Buccaneer history on the offensive side of football.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better going with a positive argument for him rather than just a negative argument for Winston.
Yeah.
But combine the two, and we're taking Doug Martin. Okay. Then off to the better side of the field, and not just slightly better, substantially better side of the field. And I still don't think that they're going to be great. Defensive side, starting off on the defensive line with David Logan, Gerald McCoy, Jason Pierre-Paul, Simeon Rice, Warren Sapp, and Roy Selman.
David Logan is a other than whatever's going on in that picture, which is a bit of an optical illusion, but just funny. Played 8 years at 38.5 sacks. He's a bottom tier. Just somebody he wasn't a bad player, but he's a bottom tier.
Gerald McCoy, 2010 to 2018, 6 Pro Bowls and a first-time All-Team. I kind of want to put him at a mid-tier. I was never a huge fan of his.
Mm-hmm. Next up, Jason Pierre-Paul. He's pretty impressive considering he has about 7 fingers. And he's a legitimately good player. I don't know if we'll see him again. He very well could be no more elsewhere. 33 sacks in 54 games, 2 picks. I just put that on there because I think it's impressive that he can catch the ball yet. He's still a bottom tier overall here.
Oh, I was probably leaning towards a lower end mid tier for him, but Simeon Rice, however, and this is where I get thrown off, like putting Gerald McCoy as a mid tier because I'm looking at Simeon Rice going, he's a top tier. His sacks to games played is substantially higher. Mm-hmm. He has the 4 picks. He's a top tier. I'm having a harder time justifying putting him at a top tier where Gerald McCoy is a mid tier, but it's where I'm at.
I think that's fair. Gerald McCoy has 6 Pro Bowls, but we do have to sometimes remember that that's at a defensive tackle position, so it's maybe slightly easier at defensive tackle to get the Pro Bowl than a defensive end, where that's a flashy position compared to defensive tackle. I understand that point, but Simeon Rice was a game changer. We talked about him in the Arizona video, and poor guy might not make a team, at least on defensive line, because we talked about Warren Sapp. He was our number. He ended up losing the shoot battle with Derrick Brooks. He's obviously a red tier. And finally, we'll end with Tampa Bay's first ever Hall of Famer, Roy Selman, one of their first ever draft picks. He came in with the team, 6 Pro Bowls, 1 first team All-Pro. He is an easy red tier for me as well. Honestly, he's my number 2.
He's my number 2 as well.
Sorry, Simeon.
And off to the linebackers. Who are we looking at here?
We have Shaquille Barrett, Derrick Brooks, Levante David, Cecil Johnson, Hardy Nickerson, Shelton Corals, and Dick Wood.
not bad. I don't think there's really any great names here outside of Derrick Brooks, who's up there already. Barrett does have 2 Pro Bowls in a short amount of time there for them. Off to a really good start. I'd have him at a mid-tier.
A very long tenured player and an often overlooked guy, Levante David, is finally starting to get some recognition in the last couple of years. Has been good for them for a long time. It's unfortunate he's played on some bad teams. Only 1 Pro Bowl, 1 first team All Pro. I would have him bordering between the mid and red myself. But I would probably I'll. Where would you? I got a feeling you would be lower than me.
I'm at a mid-tier for him.
Okay.
Again, he's solid. He's just not somebody that stands out as an all-time great. Cecil Johnson, I don't have a lot on him, and there's just not a lot there. He's bottom tier.
Hardy Nickerson coming over from free agency from Pittsburgh. Yes, he doesn't have the counting stats here to recognize. Well, why is he a 5-time Pro Bowl or 2-time first team All Pro? The dude was a tackling machine. He is a red tier.
Yeah, I'll beat you to that one.
I saw that.
Hardy Nickerson has more of name recognition for me than Derrick Brooks.
Ooh. Wow. You are probably the only person I will ever hear say that.
Hardy Nickerson, I just think was a fantastic. Now, I'm not saying that he was a better. Obviously, Derrick.
No, I know what you're saying. That's just the name you know. I know what you're saying, but
Derrick Brooks is one of those linebackers that was just one of the best that I don't think ever got recognition. Where Hardy Nickerson, I felt his name was all over the place when he played.
Well, tell us about Shelton.
Why don't you tell us about Shelton? Oh, because you had Hardy Nickerson, didn't you?
Yes.
I don't know Shelton Corals, so.
All right. Shelton Corals was the right-hand man of Derrick Brooks for a number of years. Didn't really have the name recognition as much, obviously. Kind of a forgotten man from those 2002 defenses. Hence, you don't know anything about him. It is hard to put him above the bottom tier, unfortunately, though. But
and the last one up here, again, nothing to get too excited for, but he's going to go as a mid-tier
because his name is Dick Wood.
Dick Wood.
Legitimately good linebacker in Penn State, for the record.
Dick Wood, mid-tier. So are we at Levante David or Dick Wood for the 3rd spot?
For funny recognition, Dick Wood, but for legitimate recognition, I'd go Levante David.
Yeah, Levante, again, he's been there forever, but Dick Wood spent a good amount of time there as well.
He did.
So that's why I'm going to take some D over into the Alt D. And defensive backs. We need 4 players out of these 7 names of Donnie Abraham, Ronde Barber, Mark Cotney, Brian Kelly, John Lynch, Aqib Talib, and Mike Washington.
I think more than any other position for the defense, this position shows the boom or bust of the Tampa Bay franchise. There's huge names on this list, and then it just drops. There is just no depth with this team whatsoever. We'll start with Donnie Abraham.
I don't know if there's too many huge names on here. There's 2 big names and a couple decent names and one that I like, but I'm kind of surprised that he's on here.
Donnie Abraham, we'll start with him. played for 6 seasons, made a Pro Bowl, had 31 picks in 92 games. A very undervalued guy, I thought. I put him mid-tier for the amount of interceptions he has. I thought he was a really good cornerback in the late 90s.
Yeah, agreed with him. Ronde Barber, he's one of those big names that I think of. He is a red tier.
Mark Cotney, unfortunately, I just don't know much about him, but was on the beginning of the Tampa Bay guys. There's a lot of guys on this team. There's like 3 or 4 guys that have the same amount of time play from 76 to 84. I had to check that like 2 or 3 times to make sure that was right, and I didn't screw up. He's a bottom tier, but he was a solid player in his era.
Brian Kelly, he's an all right name. Yeah, I'd go mid-tier, but lower end.
Yeah, I would agree. John Lynch is a big name, probably a top 10 safety of all time to a lot of people. Just an absolute stud. Easy red.
Aqib Talib is a guy that I like. He's the one that I'm like, there's one that I like, but I'm kind of surprised he's on the list. This is him. He's a bottom tier.
Mike Washington, another one of those 76 to 84 guys, 100 games played, 28 picks. I put him solidly into the mid-tier.
Agreed, and I don't think I'll have any disagreement here on the order here of my first 2.
I would agree with that. By the way, Ronde Barber having 12 touchdowns from the defensive side of the ball. That's incredible. But for our last 2 spots, we have 3 names to choose from.
I'm at an easy 2.
I'm at Donnie Abraham at 3, and I'm giving some recognition for the old timer Mike Washington at 4.
We're agreed on both and the order. And our defensive backs for the Buccaneers are John Lynch, Ronde Barber, Donnie Abraham, and Mike Washington.
And finally, let's move over to the alternate defensive side of the ball. Just reiterating what I said earlier, this can be any players from any position on the defensive side and punters. As you can see, we have no punters. We have 4 players that we put over here: Simeon Rice, Gerald McCoy, Dick Wood, and Brian Kelly.
Simeon Rice is an easy number 1.
Yeah.
But we are down to, for me, 2 names for the last spot on the Tampa Beer Buccaneers.
The Tampa Beer Budweisers.
Buccaneers.
The Tampa Beer Buccaneers. A Buccaneer, that'd be pretty nice, actually. I'm honestly only down to 1. I mean, Dick Wood name alone is fun to say, but honestly, I think the second spot for me is Gerald McCoy.
Oh, sorry, Dick Wood. Damn it.
Tried.
I mean, that's the easy pick, but it's not the fucking sexy one. Everybody likes that sexy dick.
That sexy Dick Wood. All right, so our team is complete. Let's go over it one more time. Let's start with the lineup.
Let's not.
I know. But I'll start with the offense here. Tom Brady at QB, James Wilder and Mike Allstott as our starting backfield, with wide receivers of Mike Evans, Mark Carrier, and Vincent Jackson, with Jimmy Giles at tight end. And on our bench for the skill positions, we have Warwick Dunn, Joey Galloway, Chris Godwin, and Doug Martin. Our first team where we have had 0 offensive linemen.
My favorite part of that is the quarterback for the 0 offensive lineman team.
There is a story behind that picture.
He's going to have to take off running and sliding with his foot up around throat high often.
Yes, he is.
Throat high, it's at least testicle high.
It wouldn't be the first time. Ask Ed Reed.
You can ask a bunch of people.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
It's illegal for every other player in the league. Tell me I'm wrong.
Jay, how about you take over the D lineup?
Defensive side of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we have John Lynch, Ronde Barber, Donnie Abraham, Mike Washington. At linebacker, we have Derrick Brooks, Hardy Nickerson, Levante David, and our defensive line of Warren Sapp, Roy Selman, Simeon Rice, and Gerald McCoy. A true 4-3 defense, including, am I wrong? Do we have actually 2 ends and 2 tackles and everything?
We do. Roy Selman was defensive end.
A very true 4-3 defense.
All right, let's do our normal talk of this team. The defense is going to keep them from being the bottom tier.
Oh, you mean
the overall? Yeah, overall.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be the overall worst team, but they're going to be in the bad tier, and I'm not going to eliminate them from the worst team. They're going to be, I think they're going to be in the discussion for it.
I think they're going to be down there. I don't think they're getting out of the bad tier. I think there's going to be plenty of teams we do that's going to, I don't know if this team is worse than even a couple of teams we've already done, and a team like Cincinnati, Atlanta, Jacksonville. It's going to be tough to put them below or the overall team.
Oh, thank you for joining us for another all-time team, this time the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Join us again next time as we take a look at another team, possibly the San Francisco 49ers. So until then, again, thank you and deuces.
New hair, don't care.